Hi there, I'm Leanne Vanderputten, mother of 11, grandmother of 41 and counting, from Finer Femininity, where I share with you tidbits of old-fashioned goodness and wholesomeness to help us on the path to being joyful, traditional, feminine Catholic women. Today, our article is from the Catholic Youth's Guide to Life and Love by Father Kelly, written in the 1950s. And this is called, Are You Sure It's Love? Reno, Nevada has a dubious reputation. It's known as the divorce capital of the world. Men and women flock to it for 6 weeks to establish their residence and then appear before a judge to obtain a decree. This decree frees them, in the eyes of the state, from their wives or husbands. It gives them the right to go through another marriage with another person. Researchers at various times have interviewed men and women who were in Reno for divorces. They've tried to find out 2 things: just what caused such unions to go haywire, and, more important, why the marriages ever took place at all. The reasons why some people seek divorces would be hilarious if they weren't so tragic. One man, married only 4 weeks, actually asked for a divorce by claiming that his eyeglasses were out of focus when he proposed. A West Coast woman charged that her husband wore earplugs whenever her mother visited them. One woman won a divorce because her husband always complained about her cooking. A man was granted one because his wife never cleaned the rings around the bathtub. Whatever the reasons for the divorce, one fact stood out in almost every case. It was that at the time of the ceremony, whether the eyeglasses were in focus or not, the man and woman sincerely believed they loved each other. Hollywood is largely responsible for this confusion. A glamorous movie star, whose picture is pinned up in army barracks from Tennessee to Tokyo, stands before a justice of the peace. By her side is a handsome, muscular leading man who causes teenage girls to swoon whenever they see him. The man and woman mutter a few words before the justice, then step outdoors to face a battery of photographers. "We love each other very much," they purr into the microphones. A year later, she too is in Reno or Mexico, seeking a divorce with heartrending stories about the monster she married. What went wrong in these cases? Obviously, these unfortunate people didn't know what true love is or could be. They were fooled by phony substitutes. And when this imitation love wore off, there was no true affection to keep them together. So, if you want to avoid their mistakes and to marry happily, make sure that love, not an inferior and perishable substitute, is what's leading you to the altar. It may surprise you to know that marrying for love is considered nonsense in many parts of the world. In fact, most humans on earth don't consider love as the only or the major factor in marriage. Even until recent times in Europe, parents usually decided whom their sons and daughters should marry. In Asia, a husband is often chosen for a girl, or vice versa, when she's 6 or 7 years old. Although Americans laugh at this kind of matchmaking, there are no records to suggest that this system gets worse results for the man and woman involved than the American way, which makes love the most important factor of all. This is the first error most of you are likely to make: to believe that marriage is all love, or at best, the lawful union of lovers. Marriage is much more than that. It is much bigger than a couple's love for each other. Marriage is a sacred work 2 people have to do for God. Love helps, makes it easier to do. The job demands doing, even if ardor has cooled. Marriage has a meaning far greater than love. From the altar rail, the couple embarks upon a lifelong mission that implies more than either of them are able to see or immediately understand. That is why it is important to choose a congenial and competent spouse over the lovable one, if such a choice has to be made. That is why marriage remains, even when love is no longer mutual. It is quite legitimate and satisfying, however, to aspire to love. But it is quite important that you know what love really is. A second error made by couples today is that they confuse love with passion and sex. Why don't more marriages for love wind up successfully with bride and bridegroom living happily ever after? The best answer seems to be that many men and women never know what love truly is. And you won't know either if you get your information on the subject from movies, popular fiction, television plays, or popular songs. According to the movie makers, a boy and girl know that they're meant for each other when their eyes first meet beneath the moonlight. No more than 50 words pass between them, and they know nothing about the other's background, personality, or peculiarities. All they know is that love conquers all, and that this is it. A typical movie or television play follows a classic pattern. Boy meets girl. They know at once that fate intended them for each other. There are a few disagreements, mostly misunderstandings for which neither is responsible. This is the boy loses girl stage. But no matter how he differs from her in his basic nature, interests, or ambitions, he wins her before the fade out. You just know that they'll live in bliss in a paradise they make for themselves on earth. Social scientists who have studied the whole question of marriage and divorce ridicule the idea that a man and woman can just fall in love. If they ever achieve true love, it's only because they've worked at it. As you begin to date and look forward to marriage, one of the most rewarding things you can do for yourself is to understand what love is. Well, what is it? Before this can be explained, it is important to know what love is not. Love is not the result of fate. Don't think that there's just one Mr. or Miss Right for you, the only person in this world who can make you happy. People who believe this usually also believe that when this mysterious, marvelous person enters their life, lights will flash, bells will ring, and the whole world will glow in widescreen Technicolor. The trouble with this idea is that it tempts you to latch on to the first person who makes you feel different. You won't want to let go no matter what defects you discover. Why risk a lifetime of regret by loving your one and only? Love is not sex. Susan was the prettiest girl in her class. Dozens of boys kept asking for dates. Tom was the most persistent. He kept telling himself that Susan was the perfect answer to his prayers. On their dates, he never bothered to find out whether she had any other worthwhile qualities. She was a knockout. That was enough for him. They married. The sexual attraction wore off. It always does. And Tom found himself with a wife who didn't know how to maintain a home, who had always been so popular that she never had to make sacrifices to get along with people, and who expected to be waited on hand and foot every hour of the day. Now, sexual harmony is important in marriage. A husband should feel a physical attraction toward his wife and vice versa. But sex appeal alone won't make a marriage happy. Consider the marriage records of some of the knockouts of women, Hollywood's actresses. Many have had 3, 4, and more husbands, and they still can't find one they can be truly happy with. Love is not glamour. In his own way, Ted exerted as much appeal with girls as Susan did with the boys. Ted's parents were rich, and he was an only child to boot. When he graduated from high school, his father gave him a new convertible as a present. Ted's pockets always bulged with folding money, and he usually took his dates to the smartest nightclubs. Many girls believed that whoever married him would get the prize catch in town. Ted began courting Agnes and chased her until, as the saying goes, she caught him. She was convinced that she loved him. Actually, she was bedazzled by the vision of life in a luxurious home, with servants, furs, and everything else that money could buy. She didn't realize that she was really marrying him for his money. Agnes got this glamorous catch, but not happiness. As she might have guessed, he was a spoiled brat who was used to getting his own way in everything. He wouldn't make even minor sacrifices to please her. Love is not an escape. Frances was the oldest of 7 children. Her mother died when she was 15, and her pop decided that Frances should stay home to care for her brothers and sisters. Pop was a stern dictator of the old school and wouldn't let her enjoy any of the usual pleasures of teenagers. She couldn't listen to the top song hits on the radio or even look at a television. She had too much work to do. Frances met a man who came to repair a leak in the plumbing. She began seeing him without her father's knowledge, and when he proposed, she quickly accepted. Although she thought she loved him, she also thought that marriage would enable her to escape the burdens of her life. Her marriage got off on a very bad start when she discovered that a wife must carry many burdens too. Before long, a marriage counselor had to step in to help Frances and her husband live together in some kind of peace. These three elements that masquerade as love, the lure of sex, the appeal of glamour, the promise of escape, probably are responsible for most marriages that hit the rocks. It's not only girls with movie star faces and figures who are married for sex. During World War II, GIs were sent to some of the most godforsaken outposts of the world. Upon landing, they often thought that the women they saw were among the ugliest creatures ever born. But as they remained there, the women seemed to grow prettier and prettier. Soon the GIs were ready to believe that all were fairy princesses. Of course, it wasn't the women's objective beauty that aroused their interest, but their own sex drive. So it is at home. A man may have a powerful drive to express himself sexually, and even a girl that most persons wouldn't consider attractive may be the object of his desire. Or a woman may have such a strong urge that she'll marry anyone in trousers. Likewise, a person who confuses glamour with love may not necessarily be attracted by wealth. Marriage itself may seem glamorous. One young woman wanted a career as a newspaper woman. For many years after she graduated from college, she had many suitors, but didn't become serious about any. She thought that marriage would tie her down and interfere with her ambitions. One by one, however, her friends married and had children. As they spoke glowingly of their husbands and little ones, she decided that marriage might be more glamorous than she had realized. When she came to this decision, she was the casual friend of a reporter in her office. She decided to marry him, not because he'd be a superior husband or father, but because she needed a man to stand by her side during the marriage ceremony. Educated though she was, she nevertheless convinced herself that she was in love. Mothers sometimes make marriage seem more glamorous than it is, especially if they're eager to marry off their daughters. They don't help their children realize that marriage has weighty responsibilities as well as consolations, and that you've got to accept both if you want to be happy. Using marriage as an escape hatch is more widespread than most people imagine. One man gambles away his salary almost every week and hates himself for doing it. Another drinks too much and is sure that marriage will straighten him out. A third can't hold a job and decides he needs something to make him buckle down, like a wife and children to support. Of course, the man who thinks he loves a woman just because she'll help him conquer his defects is putting an entirely false interpretation on love. He's also building himself up for a terrible letdown. Finer Femininity quote for the day. This life is a stage upon which we are all destined to play a certain brief sketch or role. Our parts have been assigned us by God, the supreme manager and director of the play of life. The best actor on the theatrical stage are usually eminent and highly successful in one manner of play, whereas they might fail completely if they attempted another. Similarly, God has fitted and qualified each person for a peculiar sphere of life. Whoever adopts the life he is created for and pursues it properly and fervently will achieve great success and much happiness. Whereas if one seeks to follow a life for which he is not adapted, he will necessarily incur disappointment and failure. Many a plant thrives wonderfully in the tropic zone, which is pitifully dwarfed and stunted in the temperate or Arctic zone. In the same way, many a person prospers immensely in a given vocation who would be the merest bungler in another calling. And that was by Reverend Fulgence Meyer, 1927. Thank you for tuning in today. Come and visit me at my Finer Femininity website. I have a Facebook page too, where I share with you inspirations of all kinds. I also have lots of beautiful handcrafted items in my Meadows of Grace shop. Look for those links in the description below. May God bless you and Our Lady cover you with her mantle. Saint Anne, pray for us.